Hello, everyone. Nifi extends a warm welcome to you all for the series of conversations with uh, eminent film personalities whose films are being screened in the panorama section of Nila International Folklore Film Festival. And Nifi is indeed a privilege to have with us a special guest. She is Priya Thuvassery, who is an eminent documentary filmmaker. And before going into her filmography, let me just say generally that almost all her films, it has been recognized all over the globe with participation, special mentions, best film awards in several prestigious national and international film festivals. And as has been explained to you, she is an independent, Priya is an independent documentary filmmaker, television producer, and for the time being, she is based in New Delhi. And she is someone who has donned multiple hats, so to say, that of a director, producer, scriptwriter, editor, and for the past 1 decade or so, she has been in this field of documentary production. And almost all films, they are all centered or focused on the theme of women and gender, the environment, the indigenous communities, and she views everything from a feminist perspective. And maybe I can go on and on about her, but then keeping in view the time constraint, let's get to the discussion per se.
Thank you, Mr. Vijayan, for the lovely words, kind words. And thank you, Nifi, for having me here. Vijayan said that I'm wearing a lot of hats, but I would simply put it as I would like to call myself as a storyteller. And the works which I meet on the way or want to share with the world, it's more like my own personal interest of knowing stories, which leads to, after knowing that stories, it's like want to share it with the world outside, which led to these films. Thank you for having me tonight.
And you have been resorting to the very, very effective ways in these multiple roles in your storytelling. That's your hallmark, which I would like to flag. Yes, and Priya, she started with her first film, Khanabadosh, in 2009. And then another stunning film, My Sacred Glass Ball, in the year 2013, I think. And that particular work, it delves too deep into the biased attitude of our society towards women, how people view about female virginity, and she raised a very pertinent questions on the wrong notions of virginity that is deeply embedded in the psyche of our society. And watching that film, it was a really veritable experience and too penetrating, and it should, shake us from our, you can say, conscience and the commoditization of women that is prevailing in our thing. That's really wonderful film. A few words about that, quick words.
Virgin, the film is called My Secret Glass Ball. I'm a Malayali. I think it's so obvious. So it actually came out of very personal conversations with my mother, where she used the word Palangu Patra. So from childhood, we have been hearing, I think most of the girls or women who are watching this might relate to it. We have been told that our body is sacred and it need to be preserved for the one and only one. And my mother never used the word virginity, but she always mentioned this fragile glass ball, like this Palangu Patram, which should be protected. And I remember in my childhood, like I even believed that kissing a person might make me pregnant, because when you look around the stories, the films, the even our mythology teaches us, we have so much of virgin ladies around us who are now. So all that led to the film and the conversation. But what struck was definitely a news article which came in, which spoke about virginity test, which was funded, supported by government from Madhya Pradesh. So that really triggered me and questioned me, which led to the film. I think most of the film like had similar beginnings, like let it be My Sacred Glass Ball, or the next film which you're going to talk about, Mr. Vijayan, the survey number 0. Sometimes it's one article or one headline which makes you curious, or shoots you, and you question it, and then you go behind that story, and maybe what you explore is something very different or much more deeper. So like My Sacred Glass Ball, the next movie also happened to start with an article which I read, which said that the salt, 70% of the salt made in India comes from the little run of Kutch, Gujarat, and the money which came, which the farmers got after working for 8 months in this very burning desert, was 24 paise. So that led to my journey and explored the next film, Survey Number 0, which I made in 2016, I think.
Yes, and before going into detail more about the survey number 0, I think let's just quickly touch upon your other films, Coral Women, which was underwater Uma's journey, and the environment, ecological damage that is being caused to the precious corals and all that. And maybe you had a very wonderful experience of scuba diving and into the shoot in the underworld. I mean underwater.
Yeah, that movie was indeed special. And if you see a glow in my face right now, the happiness right now is because just before this conversation we are having, we had a event online about announcing Coral Woman book. Now the movie is going to be a book, especially for children, which is getting published by HarperCollins, and the book will be available from this month for everyone. So yeah, it's an excitement. It's a new experience for me as a filmmaker as well, how your work get converted into, beyond a film. How can conversations happen beyond a film?
Yeah, nice. And let me also just mention about the segment in that Race to Feed the World, which you did about Chambal Raman. He's, you can say, one-man army to protect our traditional precious seeds and all that. And incidentally, even I had the privilege of being associated with that by doing the English subtitles. And I mean, that unraveled an entirely different personality and a world of how precious and how cautious we should be in protecting our traditional methods of cultivation and seeds and all that.
It was a series sponsored by CNA. I am not a person who assumed like I will be working on climate change or environment. It was an accidental discovery, and when you look back, you really feel that all your stories have been connected with community, people, land, gender, etc. So this project came to me as a series where they wanted stories from India on climate change. They had very broad themes on land, seeds, and insects. So when it comes to something like that, then I remembered Charuval Raman, which fitted perfectly for seeds and how organic seeds to be saved and protected. So it was like a very clear, and if there is an opportunity to share his story internationally, why not? It was worth that. I was also lucky to share like this wonderful story from Tamil Nadu about the women's collective, which is a bunch of Dalit women who is having a union, and there are more than 4 lakh women connected, and they're working on land rights.
Okay, good. And coming back to the survey number 0, yes, all of us must have seen paddy cultivation, mango cultivation, vegetables, fruits, and all that. But salt may be a totally unknown thing. Um, and let me add, salt has got a very special significance because, in our freedom struggle, Gandhiji used it as a very potent symbol in fight, arousing the spirited revolutionary zeal among the population, and so that way salt has as a symbol is very significant.
Thank you, Mr. Vijayan, for pointing it out. And I remember when I was researching for the film. So like it's just mentioned, it started with that news headline I read, and I started researching, and definitely the first images or the thoughts which came into my mind was also Gandhi, salt movement, etc. So when I pitched the film to Films Division, who is a producer of the film, it had a narrative like that, like the history of salt satyagraha, how salt became a symbol of revolution and movement. And whereas the same salt is like 24 paise per kg of salt, and how these farmers are suffering even after like so many years of independence. So that was my initial storyline when I pitched it for salt for the Films Division. But like when I pitched it, I never visited Gujarat. It was just like online and bookish readings and talking to people. It was only when I got the project, I visited Gujarat for recce. And so I'll just give a context to people who are yet to watch the film. Salt farming happens over a period of 8 months, where this community from Gujarat called Agarias, they move to this complete desert. You should imagine a desert, not the soil, the beautiful one which you see in Gujarat advertisements, but one which is with cracks and not even a bush of tree or anything anywhere. It's just like that. You can just see a sea of desert, and this community just move themselves into this desert. The entire family shifts, and they build their kacha, like rough houses, and do the salt cultivation. So the landscape is so amazing that 8 months when they do salt farming, it is this desert, and the rest of the 4 months it will be underwater. You will see boats rowing in that landscape. So it will be completely underwater, and then it's completely deserted. And then using water evaporation, they do the salt farming. And the water is so brine, so salty, that if you just dip your finger and you take it out, it will just turn completely white. And I met the farmers when they were in their village during monsoon. So I was looking for one family who I can follow over this period. But that journey led to this amazing discovery of 3 women who became like the story plot for me. And also because the treatment happened to be like that, because I was working with a national television at that point. So practically for me to balance my passion and work also made to this decision that maybe such kind of treatment, that I visit the desert 3 times in their 8 months duration, and document their story. And I felt like when I witnessed other issues which is happening in that place, I understood it's not just about salt farming. Farming became like a backstory, and it was more about other issues which I witnessed there.
Yes, and I think that is also another, it's very significant element of your film, that it's genesis of it is human oriented, people oriented, common people and their struggle for existence or a struggle for livelihood. And yes, and as you mentioned, yes, and you had shot the film, you had to shoot the film in extreme, inhospitable climatic conditions where the temperature will be up above 50 degrees in summer, as also it will be biting cold during the winters. And could you just tell something about that?
When I look back, it is like a interesting memory, but I clearly remember it was not that tough. One, I went with a decision that it's going to be a full women crew, because one, I don't have that kind of time and liberty that even a male crew will be getting comfortable so quickly with my characters. And even when I was visiting the people community during the recce, it was like when you visit a village, any North Indian village, it is like the men speaks, they are like, okay, why are you here? They'll explain everything. And then they say, okay, you can go inside and have tea. And then the women and me comes in place. And then I saw a very different them. They just removed their gungat and they are like, they want me to click their photographs. There was an equation which was very interesting. So I felt it might be very interesting, or it will be very helpful if I have a full women crew. And it's also a part of my politics of making cinema. So I decided with, having a full women crew. So again, like I'm reminding you, we are going to this unknown space where, you can't even say that I have to take a left from here or right from there, because it looks the same everywhere. So one, we have to drive into this desert for an hour, 2 hours, sometimes 3 hours, depending on the location of the characters. And you need a local person's help, definitely. Then the driver, then the 3 women. So we are like 5 people in a team. And generally our shoots were like 2 to 3 days every visit, then 2 days of traveling. That means almost like roughly 4 to 5 days I have to take care of food, water, everything for the entire crew. And you have to imagine it's like a burning desert where the food should not be getting spoiled. And for me, the first time when I even calculated the amount of water we are going to have, that went wrong, because it was so hot for us that the community people, they were drinking less water compared to us. But for us, it was very different. So that was a big challenge. Water, food, then comes no toilets. So full for a women crew, and we don't even have a bush to go behind. So day one, I remember we were waiting for evening so that we can free ourselves. But from day 2, we are like, we don't care, we were just going openly in that space. I remember that. And night in a desert was also unique. And shooting was definitely challenged because the camera used to get like heated up very fast. And since it was so hot, we were not able to shoot from 11 o'clock to 3:30, etc. So the time gap we had, the luxury we had to shoot was also less. So yeah, there were indeed a lot of challenges that way, but we built some beautiful relationships out of that. One of the character in the film, we are still in contact. In that film, she was yet to get married. Like we spoke about her dreams to get married. She didn't want to get married to an Agaria, but she knows what will be waiting for her, etc. We are still in touch. She's having a baby right now, a beautiful baby boy. And she sends photographs. I send my photographs. So we are in touch that way. Yeah. But I don't know what happened to Pashiben, that old woman, because she didn't have a mobile phone, which I could have get connected. With a young person, it's much more easier.
Yeah, that stunning image of that when it will just linger in our minds forever. That her wrinkled face, all that, and even that 10-day-old child, cute baby who was being bathed and all that.
Yeah.
And during the shoot, was there any health issues to any of the crew members, or because of the extreme climatic this thing?
For the crew, luckily, no. But what happened with the first character was, again, that was language issue also. When I did the recce, I met the baby, it was just born. So they were speaking in Gujarati, and I assumed the child was a girl. So when I figured, I decided I'm going to visit this family, it was because of the baby. And when I went to shoot, the family said, like, I was like, where is the baby girl? So they are like, chora aane wala hai. And I'm like, chora, like that means a baby boy. Then they're like, yeah, it's a boy. Then it completely made me, oh my God, what I planned was like 3 stages of salt. I had like lovely fancy treatment, but it happened to be a boy. But I'm like, okay, that's what happens in a documentary, right? You have to adapt to what is waiting for you. So I went ahead with that character, but the baby fell sick while we were shooting, and it was chaotic. Then I gave my car and they took the baby at night for the shoot, and it was very difficult for me as a filmmaker also, because it was chaotic. It was very painful. My camera woman was like, should I roll? Because the parents were like, the mother was crying, we didn't know what was going to happen. But I said no. At that moment I felt, I think it's a personal choice. Maybe if it was some other filmmaker, they might have went with, because it's a reality which was happening in front of you. But somehow my consciousness didn't let me shoot it. I said, let the shoot pause, and we sent the family to the mainland, where they could get some hospital treatment, etc. So it affected the shoot in a way, because we even our character went with them, etc. But at that moment I felt that was right. And like when we say like filmmaking, there are arcs and peak points of emotions, etc. It could have been one of those, but that was not important for me at that point. And in the end of the film, when we were even with Pashi, when the last character, we revisited the baby boy. So if you go to Survey Number Zero's Facebook page, I have put both their pictures, like when I met him for the first time and when we visited him again. So it was a happy moment to see him healthy, chubby. Yeah, that.
Yes, again, the humanness in you has, became supreme rather than your professional vested interests, if I can say. So that's really great of you, and ultimately that's how we should be, because always we should have the human consideration more than any other our narrow ends, so to say. It's really commendable on your part to think of that. Right.
I don't know if it is a plus or minus, because sometimes I feel like some document, when it comes to, for example, if you remember the most famous photographs of World War about that child and eagle, a child being eaten, a malnutrition child being eaten by an eagle. So at that point, the photographer had a choice to save, or maybe had a choice, but also capture a photograph. But it's again like it was also important that it need to be documented for the world to know what went at that point of time. So it's all like very, like, it's the strength you have, or I don't know, I like, that's what I feel. It could be my positive, like you said, or it could be my weakness, I don't know, but I felt I went with what my heart said at that point of time.
Yeah. And you were mentioning about the price of this salt, and I think it's still very much relevant in the context of this farmers' agitation, that is the farmers being exploited. And as you mentioned, the farmers are getting only 24 paise to 30 paise maximum per 1 kilo of salt, whereas the same salt, after some iodized or stuff, and when it is packed and it's sold in the market at a minimum rate of 30 rupees. So the real farmer who toils at the ground level, he is paid peanuts, he gets peanuts, and the large chunk of the profits is being pocketed by somebody else, which is a very sad state of affairs.
Yeah. Like you said, it was actually this information that it was so cheap, their labor was so cheap, or considered so cheap, led me to this film. And I remember when I was shooting the film in 2015, the price went down from 24 to 21 paise. And farmers decided not to, they decided to protest. So it resonated with what is happening right now, that they went for protest and they said they won't go to the desert. And you can imagine like 70% of the salt produced will be on in pause if this happens. But like it is a lobby, it's a big lobby, and they couldn't succeed that protest, and finally most of them accepted that price and had to go to the desert. I met one farmer who invested, like who had some profit from a previous time, and he invested his own money. So what happens with them is salt price get pre-decided, and they get like money from lenders every month for their kharcha pani, which is like diesel and food and water, travel, etc. And finally, when the salt is produced, he comes back and he picks it, etc. But this family decided not to take any money from the lenders, and they used their own money, and they said, so they felt that, you know, in the end they will have that supremacy to say what is the price of their salt. But again, it's a lobby. Nobody came forward to take the money, and finally he had to sell the salt in the same rate which was given to other farmers. So it's a huge fight against, like, you know, people in power against these people. And we have also imagined this is like people who are not even considered as farmers. They don't own the land that they can put that land and get some bank loan or bank support. And it's also interesting and how it is like a vicious cycle, because the entire family shift to this desert. So children's education is affected. Even the children who comes, they don't know anything beyond salt farming, so they end up in becoming a salt farmer, and they're not even recognized as a farmer. And the land rights was definitely a big issue. So yeah, the film also happened to document that a bit.
Yes, as you rightly mentioned, see, they are a group of people who have been denied their basic fundamental rights of right to education, right to health, right to livelihood. Everything is just written in, I mean, in glossy, this thing in our constitution, and all those blah blah is there. But at the ground level, their plight is just abominable, to say the least. It's, I mean, you can't even imagine that. I think the entire Gadia community, there must be around 40,000 to 50,000 people total
Yeah,
population.
definitely. And they have been a family, community who have been cultivating salt for a very long time. But hardly any research or documentation have been done about them. But there are like references in old songs and folk songs which are available in Gujarat. That is why the film ends with a folk song, because that is like living documentation of their plight and dreams, etc. So the credits was planned specifically thinking about that, because the salt which is familiar to us is the one which is in fancy packet, aapki namak mein kya hai, iodine hai, whatever. So, and it's such an integral part of our food, daily life. So like the idea was that, you know, next time when someone take a pinch of salt, they should remember its journey, how it reached there. So the credits is weaved as if, like, you know, how that salt reaches your table. Yeah.
It's really regrettable that despite having such a population, and no political party or doesn't at least give a consideration to them, that they are a vote bank or something, and try to wean them towards this side, and at least in the process they get some facilities or some assistance. Even that's not happening, I think. No.
Yeah. Even right now, like since I'm in touch with some community activists, etc., from that area, now there are different issues which are not there in the film, and I wish someone go back and document all that. You know, because Gujarat now has a lot of canals and, you know, famous water projects, etc. Oh, and sometimes water get diverted into their fields because this is a desert. So many farmers had situations where, you know, their entire effort of, you know, months get completely underwater, and it get like the soil get like, it's, imagine like a desert, suddenly water get diverted into the desert, and it get flooded. So such incidents have been reported quite a lot of times. So this is a 2015-16 film. Things had gone like in different levels, things had changed, and still there is a lot of problems which are not discussed in the film, which the farmers are facing.
And do these people, they migrate from that during a specific season, or they remain, I mean, they keep staying there throughout the year?
8 months they will be in the desert, and the rest of the 4 months when the desert will be like in monsoon, and I said like a lot of water in that area, the community goes back to the villages.
Okay.
So that happens, but it's very interesting also when they go back, they all the equipments they use, they just dig a what do you say, kui, and they just put everything into it and just cover it. And then imagine, once they have done it, it's all water, boats will be rowing around, and they come back next year, next season, and dig it out and take all those equipments back. And I sometimes wonder, like, how do they even navigate? How do they know exactly here, like I was there? Because as an outsider, when I go, like everything looks the same for me. It's the same plain desert. But yeah, quite interesting community they are. And another issue which is there in the film is it's also a wild ass sanctuary. So it's an endangered wild ass which is very famous in that part, which is there, and you will find it in advertisement of Gujarat, where there are safaris where people are taken to see wild ass. And when I was shooting the film, there were a lot of problems which the salt farmers faced, and they were even stopped from entering into the desert, saying, it's a wild ass sanctuary and they are threat to the wild ass population. But they coexist, the communities coexist so beautifully. I remember when I saw a wild ass, it was so far, and as soon as our vehicle approached, it just ran away. Whereas one of the characters in the film, her sister, had a small mini camera, which is again another kind of exploitation. Some tourist had given it to her, and the idea was like he gave the camera at the beginning of the season, and he's going to come back and collect it at the end of the season. So whatever photographs this little girl had clicked becomes his, or whatever he does. But her images were so stunning. You see wild ass so close, and that really makes you understand the relationship of the community and the wild ass, how they coexist. This also reminds me of a project which I did in Wayanad, where we met Katunayaka community. Even in their vocabulary, when they say nammal or us, it means animals and them. And when they say you, it means we, outsiders who decide whether they should enter the forest or not. So it seems so similar here that they coexist, and it is us who outsiders who just decide, oh, this is wrong, this is bad for them. Whereas activists do say that it is actually the safaris which follows the wild ass, which make them run fast, and it increases the temperature and leads to collapse. So it's actually the tourism which is more threatening than the community members. But I do accept a part of it where there would be demarcated areas. For example, salt is a huge industry. That means the vehicles which are commuting for water, even salt being taken back to the industries, all these need to be demarcated well so that it doesn't disturb this species. So instead of doing such scientific, sustainable stuff, this just, it's like the partition, right? You just draw a line and say that, okay, this is India, this is Pakistan, and without even understanding, where that line should have been drawn. Yeah.
And probably even after a lapse of 3 decades, the land rights are still not bestowed upon them, no, despite the government ordering that it can be, or given an exception to their community. I think it's still not bestowed upon them, I think, no?
Yeah. And so when I was researching the film, I got really fascinated by even this thing, that survey number 0. So it was I was told that it was in an unsurveyed land, and then an RTI was filed, and they were found that there was no survey done, and it got that number, survey number 0. There are a few other survey number 0 lands also in India, but I think that itself makes a statement that, you know, it's a land which need to be studied, and this community need to be studied, and their rights need to be seen, and voice need to be heard.
Yes, and it's a unique or exceptional thing that there is no, I mean, there is a land without any survey number. I don't think in any other part of India you can find any piece of land. Even maybe in the Himalayan glaciers also they must have assigned some survey numbers, I think.
Yeah.
That's also a unique thing.
I heard that there is something in towards the northeast, but it could be, it's just someone told me like there is something in northeast. Yeah.
Yes. And any questions from the audience? If Priya can direct it at, if it is there, please. Okay. So yes, we would like to have carried on with our discussion for some more time, but then the time constraint is there. So I think we'll have to end up over here. And once again, on behalf of NIFI and on my personal behalf, it's really a pleasure having you with us and talking, sparing your time. And before that, I guess, let me share the glad news that Priya's latest movie, City Girls, it has been selected in the competition section of the International Documentary Film Festival of Kerala, IDFFK, and a hearty congratulations to you, Priya.
Yeah, that is a movie which I think nobody had seen so far. Like, it's yet to be released, so I'm also excited how people will be watching this film. It was one film which I had fun. You know, if you look at all my films, it was all challenging, going to the desert, going to underwater, etc. But this is like a happy, beautiful film about two girls, and looking at what is city, coming from a rural small town in India. What does this mean to be in a city, and what does city means to them? So it's a beautiful story of two young girls who came to Delhi.
Yes, and I think I need not apologize as a parting word for speaking in Malayalam. അപ്പൊ എന്തായാലും നമ്മുടെ നാട്ടുകാരി കുട്ടിയായതുകൊണ്ട് തീർച്ചയായിട്ടും ഇനിയും വളരെ ഉയരങ്ങളിലേക്ക് പോകട്ടെ, നല്ല നല്ല സിനിമകൾ എടുക്കാൻ ഉള്ള അവസരം ഉണ്ടാവട്ടെ. അപ്പൊ എല്ലാ അഭിനന്ദനങ്ങളും ആശംസകളും. So thank you once again, and goodbye to everyone.
And thank you, Nev. Thank you, Mr. Vijan. Thank you. Bye.